The topic is the International Conference on Alcohol and Harm Reduction in Cape Town, South Africa, 2006. And we have with us our guest, Ms. Joyce Perkins. Now, of course, Ms. Perkins, let me give you an opportunity over this last segment to talk about some of the things that you saw in South Africa that you believe our viewers would be interested in, and in a real sense give us a report, because we've not been to to Cape Town, but you just came from Cape Town, and tell us within that perspective about what you saw, and then later on you can perhaps give us some recommendations in terms of what we ought to do in reference to what you saw.
Oh, thank you. And I think that in terms of the drug problem that I witnessed and saw, is that one, they have alcohol is just rampant. One is it just culturally accepted, it's available and it's cheap. And this new drug, it's not new here in this country. It's called tick there, it's called methamphetamine. It is rampant in the townships and it's rampant throughout Cape Town. And the person that was taking me around, my guide, 10 people died in 3 days of tick overdose. So, and that was
that rampant.
That is what was happening, and that, I mean, it was one of his best friends that had been that overdosed from it. And it's very, and it's, again, it's cheap, it's available, and people use it. And there's no treatment. There is only one treatment center in Cape Town that's sponsored by the government. I got to see that. I'm sure that you've seen the photo of the treatment center there. And there are private treatment centers, but you have to have money to do that. It's not available. In terms of what the townships were like, I mean, people care. You see people mending their housing. They're trying to paint them, make them look nice. You see clothes hanging out all the time. The children are in school. Again, schools are not free. They have to pay for them. They need clothes. The kids are just, they're out either close to their families, by observation, or else they're just wandering around the streets. There was a kidnapping of a little girl in one of the townships. The way news gets posted is that they take the front page and they just post it around the townships. And I went to several townships, but you know, it just seems to be not everybody buys a paper, and not everybody has a TV. The electricity is scarce. Electricity goes out. Everybody does not have electricity. There's townships, there's houses that I went into where there's wires all over the place, and yet you have next door neighbors hooking into the electricity because they haven't got electricity. The issue with HIV and AIDS and medication and electricity. I asked at the center where the babies were, I said, what's the hardest part of working here? And they said, the babies come in and they're compromised, they're not doing well. What happens, they get fed, and they start thriving. They go back to their homes where the mother is infected already. They give them medication and a refrigerator. They throw the refrigerator out and they throw the medication out because then everybody knows they have AIDS. And the stigma is just so visible that they don't want to be part of it, because people just get beat up. People have been killed and beat up to death because they have HIV and AIDS. So, you know, when you have those kinds of stigmas, it's very hard to move forward with the magnitude of what's out there and what you see. The other issue is the prison situation. I got to go to the prisons, and these were boys that were young men that were 18, 19, and 20 years old, in there for murder, killing, rape, and drug offenses. They have a system there called 26, 27s, and 28s.
26, 27s.
And 28s. And the 28s sodomize, they're sexually abusing people. Not much different than what goes on here, but there's a system that just really works like that. And then the 27, and it's usually the big guys that are doing the violence. And then, of course, the HIV, there are condoms. The 28s don't like the condoms. We sat and talked for 2.5 hours with these guys in terms of how they can take care of themselves. And there were some 28s in the room being able to hear what was being said. And of course, and then I'm gone. So, you know, it's a very serious problem. We have an urge, we have a epidemic globally. We're going to be celebrating World AIDS Day. The theme this year is keep the promise and accountability.
But now what we're saying here now is that since Africa is such an important continent, that unless we can really deal with it, with this situation in the Cape Towns and the Durbans and all of these other cities where we've heard reports, then there's absolutely nothing that we should hope of ever eradicating this disease. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I mean, again, if I, I think of the 20-odd years I've been working, I always think there's hope. I think that people need to be accountable. I think that people in grassroots and in political elected officials, we have been doing this work for 1980, it's 27 years already. And we know what needs to be done. We don't have to have any more studies. We need to put into practice what we already know. In terms of drug use, we have a country here in this country that won't even let needle exchange exist to help addicts keep themselves clean from AIDS and from hepatitis C. The same is true. There are, countries that need this kind of, it's a very inexpensive, it really needs to be paid attention to in terms of prevention and education. But leaders and elected officials need to take a stand, and there needs to be a real pulling together of resources. I mean, there's no, as long as there's hunger in this world, there can be no justice, and you're losing potential teachers, you're losing, potential, no matter how you're looking at it, you're losing a segment of a population. It's a genocide.
And of course we've got about 3 minutes, but I think that the message that you have is not only an excellent message in terms of AIDS prevention and etc., but I think it's also a message that could be used by dealing with some of our young people, which is to say that you've talked about the lack of education and what people will do in terms of education. Why don't you use the next 3 minutes that we have here to talk to our young people who really don't seem to have an interest in education and etc., and perhaps tell them about what is being, how other individuals in Africa and other places might yearn for the kind of free education that's here.
All I can say is I think Spike Lee said, wake up, just really wake up, use every moment. I have 3 grandsons. I tell them every day, use your brain, pay attention, listen, and, school, it's the thing that you're going to do for the next 20 years. I mean, you can say it as a joke. I mean, when I look at all the Game Boys and everything like that, put it aside, take a book, read, talk to somebody, talk to an adult. I mean, education is so important, as well as, being part of the community, paying attention to what's going on. And this is for the older adults, the young adults. I hear stories about TSU students just wasting time, not paying attention, not wanting to do their work. The same is true over Vandy. I was in a conversation last night. Everybody is like, I don't have to do anything. We have health care, we have every issue is back on the table. We need to wake up.
Very good. And one of the things that in reference to these reports about dealing with Africa, do you think that there's some way that we can create a new national consciousness among our leaders in terms of dealing with some of these issues?
Look, I mean, there has to be the private and nonprofit sectors working together. The churches are involved. There has to be not separatism, but really a coalition and being inclusive of every piece of resource possible. Because again, I see it as a genocide. I see people dying. I mean, even in this country, I mean, we have, what are we talking about? Sexual behavior and drug behavior. Something that could really be stopped. 27 years into the, pan-epidemic, and it's still here. And there's still new cases, and African Americans are still in the lead of new cases that are happening. Something's not right with that picture. We're doing something that, we got to be talking to each other more. We have to be able to be open and hearing new ways of doing things, because what we're doing is not working.
Very good. And of course, over this last half minute, Ms. Perkins, let me thank you for coming by and giving us that excellent report on what is going on in Cape Town, South Africa, in addition to all of the other information that you gave us, especially to our young people. I think that will be instructive to them. And of course, let me also encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.